Hi, and greetings, everyone. Welcome back. We are on Unit 1.3, Philosophy Bootcamp. I'm Dr. T. Let's get started. All right, so Philosophy Bootcamp is a really exciting lecture because it's an opportunity to train your brain to think like a philosopher. Most times when you hear the word bootcamp, you're training yourself physically, but in this particular case, you're going to be training your mind, okay? So, what that means is that in this lecture, we're going to cover the following points. We're going to learn how to ask critical questions. If you remember in the last lecture, I spoke about the cue card. One of the essential elements of philosophy is learning to question. So I'm going to give you a general blueprint, if you will, of how to ask critical questions as we move through this course, okay? The second thing we're going to talk about is effective critical thinking and analyzing. These will be essential for this semester. We're going to have to think critically about the works from these different philosophers that we're covering throughout the course, but we're also going to be analyzing their work as well as analyzing our own arguments in relation to their work. Okay, so that's going to be critical to understand how to properly, effectively critically think and how to properly analyze an argument to determine if it's a strong argument or a weak argument. Finally, we're going to talk about what's called the CER method. And this is basically a methodology to help people or help thinkers or students essentially provide good reasoning for their particular beliefs. Again, one of the tools that you're going to take away from this course is being able to not just believe something, but to back up your beliefs with reasoning. And this CER method will help you do so. All right. So, asking critical questions. Okay, every philosopher throughout history basically was an expert at asking critical questions. And critical questions lead to innovation, new thoughts, and progress in our world. Okay, so here I have several prompts, ways to start a question, and you can pretty much fill in the blank with whatever comes to mind. And once you fill in the blank, you'll have a good critical question to think about. It can be something that's super serious, but it can also be something that just pushes your mind creatively to think how the world would be if this particular thing occurred, okay? So, here are some of the beginning prompts to ask critical questions. What if? How could blank be used to blank? Why do? Where would or is? When is it? And who provides a strong counter argument for. So you see all the basic elements there, right? Who, what, when, where, and why. But let's put this into application, okay? What if? What if every thought that someone had was actually tattooed on their skin? This would take us down an interesting road, right? Because what if that were true? If that were true, how would it change the way people interacted with one another? Or how would it even change the way we produced our thoughts or the things we thought about, the negative thoughts that we hold? Okay. What if, thinking about someone like Descartes, right? He asked what if questions, which led him to his theory. What if the reality we perceive is not real? What if it's basically a dream or something else, right? This would essentially lead us down a very curious road as it did him. And for him, it led to theory. For us, it leads to a really good discussion. Okay. Let's look at the why do. There's a philosophical line of thought called antinatalism. So we take something that people hold as common or take for granted, right? And we can ask the question, why do? Why do people pursue happiness, for example? Right? Or with, I'm sorry, with the antinatalist argument, why do people have children? We assume having children is a good thing. Antinatalists think it's actually a bad thing. But by asking the question, why do people have children? We would start to look into all the reasons that people do, and it would lead us down an interesting road. Why do people pursue happiness at the end of the day? That's a very good question to start to examine the purpose of life or happiness itself. Let's take another one last example. Who provides a strong counter argument? This is really a good one. One of the best ways to challenge our beliefs and make sure they hold up is looking at the other side of things, right? So it's easy to find arguments that support our own thought, but sometimes it's good to ask who provides a strong argument that's counter to what we think. And by looking at that, we can either strengthen our own argument or at least find the holes in our own argument or beliefs, okay? So, for example, in a previous lecture, we talked about laws, and are laws always ethical? Okay, so we could ask a question: who provides a strong counter argument to the idea that laws are always ethical, or even if they're unethical, we should follow them anyway? If we thought about that question, we could come up with thinkers like Martin Luther King or Henry David Thoreau, who were individuals that provide a strong argument against the claim that you should always follow the law no matter what. Okay. So, again, take these prompts, write them down, and use them as a way to come up with critical questions as you go through the readings for this semester. And as you, in general, kind of go through life, these can be good critical questions to ask that can, again, critical questions lead to critical answers, solutions, and progress. All right. So, next up, effective critical thinking and analyzing. At the top of the page, you will see that I've provided you with a blueprint for how to evaluate arguments and analyze an argument. So, you try to first summarize the reasons, try to find what reasons the author is providing for their particular argument. You assess the evidence, you describe the quantity and the quality of the proof. How much evidence are they giving, and is it quality evidence? Okay. You will next try to identify the perspectives. Are they only selling one point of view, or are they providing a balanced perspective or a balanced view of a particular situation or issue that they're arguing for? And finally, investigating the author. This means basically looking at who's saying the argument, right? Are they someone that basically, do they have expertise in the particular area? Are they valid? Should we believe this particular person? Okay. So here below, I've provided what is an argument here in the States. It's a common debate in the States about immigration, okay? And there's typically two sides to this debate. Some people that believe undocumented immigrants should not be here, and some people that believe they do. So, what we're going to do is essentially look at this particular argument and ask ourselves, is this a strong argument or a weak argument, by using our process that I've listed here above? So, first, let's look at the reasons this person provides. Their claim is that undocumented immigrants should not be here in America. What reasons do they give? Some of the reasons they provide here, they say they're bad people for breaking the law. The leader of our country said they're bad, so it must be true. They don't contribute to America in any way, and they haven't earned American citizenship. Now, these are the reasons they provide. Someone who is not a critical thinker may hear these reasons and say, yeah, this is a strong argument. But we are philosophers now, and we're critical thinkers, right? So let's look at these reasons and say, do they make sense? So the first one, for example, they're bad people for breaking the law. Is everyone who breaks the law necessarily a bad person? Speeding is sometimes is considered breaking the law, but if you speed or go 5 minutes, 5 miles over the speed limit, does that make you a bad person? What if, thinking about how we ask critical questions, right? What if I break the law in order to help someone? Does that make me a bad person? So we would look essentially at this argument and try to break it down in that way. Let's look at one more of their reasons and see if it holds up or if it makes sense. Um, the final point here, one of their reasons that they believe undocumented immigrants shouldn't be here is because they say you have to earn American citizenship. Based off of that reasoning, essentially, then basically all Americans shouldn't be here because all people born here did not earn American citizenship. So, do you see how you take the different reasons and you ask yourselves, are they quality reasons and do they make sense? Now, as far as assessing the evidence, in this particular argument, they don't really give too much evidence, right? They don't necessarily provide statistics or facts to back up what they're saying. They're simply making statements. So, for example, they're saying that undocumented immigrants don't contribute to America, which is clearly untrue. But in addition to being untrue, they just don't provide any evidence, right? They don't give any stats or any numbers to show or support their particular stance. So that's something that we'll be looking for when we're analyzing arguments from this semester. When we look at John Locke, Kant, etc., do they give solid evidence to back up their particular line of thinking. Okay. The last 2 points, identifying perspectives. Is this a balanced argument? Absolutely not, right? So, whenever you have an argument that does not at least acknowledge the other side, even if it does not agree fully with the other side or argues against the other side, an acknowledgement of both sides is a well balanced argument, and a well balanced argument is typically a stronger argument, okay? And finally, investigating the author. There's no particular author to this particular claim. It's just, again, one argument that's often given here in the States within the immigration debate. But at the end of the day, if a particular person said this, say, for example, the leader of our country or a politician or a congressman or congresswoman, we would essentially look at the expertise of that particular person. Do they have expertise in immigration or immigration law? Do they have experience as an immigrant or actual direct contact with those who have come here undocumented, right? So we would look for what expertise do they have to make this claim or this particular argument, okay? So again, this blueprint here will be a good guide for you to help you analyze the arguments within this course that the philosophers provide, but also for your personal use to analyze your own arguments and to see if they hold up against scrutiny at the end of the day, okay? All right, finally, how do you provide strong reasoning for what you believe? You believe something, whatever it is, right? In the last slide, that particular person believed undocumented immigrants should not be here in the States. There could totally be a person on the other side of that argument that believes absolutely undocumented immigrants have a right to be here or should be allowed to stay here in the States, okay? Whatever your particular claim, you have to, or your particular belief, you have to be able to back it up with reasoning and evidence, okay? So the CER method will help you organize your thoughts in a way to provide the best reasoning for your beliefs. So claim, the C in the CER method stands for claim. What is the main thesis or point that you want to argue, okay? We're going to use Descartes here as an example. One of his many arguments is the following. It is possible that I am dreaming right now versus being awake, okay? This is the claim or one of the main points he's trying to make in his particular writing, okay? What evidence does Descartes provide? What information does he give us to support his particular claim? And of course, we haven't covered Descartes yet. We'll get into him. But again, you can just follow my line of thinking here to see how the CER method works. So what evidence does he give? So one thing he talks about is not having any distinguishing markers between his waking life and his sleeping life, right? Sometimes his dreams feel very real to him. So therefore, if there's no distinguishing markers, how can he know for sure if he's dreaming or if he's awake? The other point that he makes, the other evidence he provides, is basically his senses. Sometimes our senses deceive us, essentially. And so, if our senses can deceive us, is it possible that they're deceiving even me right now? I think I'm giving a lecture when in reality I'm laying in my bed asleep, okay? So, he's made his claim. It's possible that he's dreaming. He's provided his evidence. And then finally, what we do with reasoning is we put everything together into a well-crafted statement, okay? So taking Descartes' claim along with his evidence, we would come up with the following reasoning. Based on the evidence provided, it seems reasonable to assert that one can't easily distinguish between dreaming and waking state, thus supporting my claim that it's possible that I'm dreaming right now versus awake, okay? So you can see how the CER method works to help you organize your thoughts and basically present them in a clear way. So versus just saying, I believe particular thought A, this provides you with a method to say, I believe this, here's my evidence, and then put it all together in a well structured statement that basically makes people more inclined to believe your particular claim. Now, just because you're using the CER method doesn't mean that every claim is absolutely true or can't be argued against. But again, it's a good way of organizing your thoughts, okay? All right, so we have covered so far how to ask critical questions, how to think critically in an effective way, and how to analyze. And finally, we've covered here the CER method. So I think that's everything. You have now officially trained your brain to think like a philosopher. and you're ready to move on to the next unit. So, as usual, thank you so much, and please continue on to Unit 1, Lecture 4.